Long before the Roman Empire stretched across continents like a mighty eagle unfurling its wings, the people of Rome understood that a great civilization was not built only with strong soldiers or clever leaders. It was built with pathways, connections, and the steady rhythm of water flowing through every neighborhood. The early mornings of the bustling city echoed with the footsteps of workers carrying tools, the rumbling of carts loaded with stone blocks, and the lively chatter of architects sketching plans for structures that would one day bind the empire together. Children followed behind them with wide, curious eyes, imagining that they were assistant engineers helping shape the future. Even the sun seemed to shine brighter on days when new roads or aqueducts were planned, as if cheering for the beginning of something grand. Across workshops filled with dust, chalk, and wooden models, Roman engineers gathered over scrolls covered in neat lines and careful measurements. Their hands traced each slope, each curve, each arch with unwavering concentration, shaping ideas that would determine how entire regions traveled, traded, and lived. Craftsmen sharpened chisels until they gleamed, hammering test stones to find the perfect shape for a sturdy foundation. The scent of fresh-cut timber mixed with the dry smell of limestone, turning every workshop into a hive of innovation. Children peeked through windows to watch, fascinated by the precision and care that went into every decision, dreaming of the day they might design something just as magnificent. Soon the workers marched out of the city, accompanied by surveyors carrying tall staffs marked with mysterious symbols. With squinting eyes and steady hands, they measured distance, slope, and direction, their voices calling out numbers that echoed across the open fields. They planted flags to mark the road's future path, poking through grass and soil like colorful arrows pointing toward new horizons. Horses snorted impatiently beside them, pulling carts stacked with tools and ropes, while clouds floated lazily above as if interested in witnessing the grand construction. Children ran along the flagged lines, imagining that they were explorers charting unknown lands. The building of a Roman road began with the rumble of picks and shovels biting into the earth. Workers dug deep trenches, layer by layer, removing rocks, roots, and stubborn soil under the warm Mediterranean sun. Dust rose around them in soft golden clouds while foremen called out instructions over the clatter of metal tools. Once the trench was prepared, they filled it with carefully arranged layers, large stones for strength, gravel for support, sand for stability, and finally smooth paving stones that fit together like pieces of a giant puzzle. Each stone was placed with precision, as if fitting together the bones of the empire itself. Children watched with awe as the road slowly transformed from rough earth into a polished surface that seemed ready for heroes and adventurers. Merchants soon traveled those first completed stretches, their carts packed with olives, wine, and colorful fabrics from distant lands. Soldiers marched confidently along the new pathways, their armor glinting like a river of metal under the sunlight. Messengers on swift horses galloped across the smooth surface, carrying letters sealed with wax and stamped with symbols of power. Travelers from neighboring towns were astonished at how quickly they could reach Rome, amazed by the strength and straightness of the road beneath their sandals. Even children felt the difference, racing along the stones and laughing at how much faster their feet could carry them. But while the roads connected people across vast distances, something equally important flowed within the city itself: water, the shimmering lifeline that every Roman depended on each day. Engineers, fueled by determination and imagination, designed aqueducts that would carry fresh water from mountains and springs miles away. Their early sketches filled with arches and channels looked almost like works of art, each line promising a future where clean water was no longer a luxury, but a steady, dependable gift to all citizens. Families gathered around model aqueducts displayed in the forum, marveling at how simple stone and gravity could work together with such magic-like precision. Soon teams of builders ventured far into the countryside, following the gentle slope that would guide water across valleys, hills, and plains. They tested the land with tools that clicked softly in a wind, marking a perfect angle that allowed water to flow smoothly without rushing too fast or slowing too much. Along the valleys, they constructed soaring arches that rose like stone bridges in the sky, each block placed with patient hands and unwavering focus. Children stood below the growing structures with heads tilted back, jaws dropping at the sight of arches towering so high that birds circled around them as if trying to understand these new giants of stone. In the mountains, workers carved channels through rock walls, their hammers echoing like distant thunder across cliffs and ravines. Water trickled through temporary pads, shimmering like silver ribbons that danced around their ankles. Foremen knelt beside the channels, testing the flow with careful eyes, making tiny adjustments that would ensure the water reached Rome at just the right speed. Even raindrops seemed to pause on the mountain peaks, curious to see how humans could guide water with such elegance and intelligence. Back in the city, massive reservoirs were built to receive the incoming water, great stone basins that glistened under the sun like giant bowls waiting to be filled. Pipes made of terracotta and lead stretched through neighborhoods, twisting beneath homes, markets, and baths. When the first streams trickled through, children gathered around the fountains with excited cheers, touching the cool liquid with their fingertips as if welcoming a new friend. Soon the fountains burst to life, sending arcs of water into basins where people filled jars, washed hands, and splashed their faces with refreshing delight. Public baths, once quiet and dry, now filled with warm laughter and swirling steam. Families visited together, soaking, washing, and relaxing in the flowing water. Merchants rinsed dust from their feet after long days in the marketplace, while storytellers sat in the warm pools sharing tales of distant lands. Even the smallest children giggled as they played in shallow waters, splashing until they were scolded and then forgiven for making such joyful messes. The aqueducts had brought more than water. They had brought comfort, health, and a new sense of community to every corner of Rome. All across the city, life changed. Bakers used fresh water to knead dough for bread that filled the air with the smell of warm wheat. Gardeners tended to plants that blossomed with new colors. Doctors prepared remedies, mixing herbs with clear water drawn from public fountains. The city shone brighter, cleaner, and more alive than ever before, all because the Romans had mastered the art of guiding both stone and water with skill, imagination, and unwavering determination. And every night, as torches flickered on the wide, smooth roads and moonlight glowed on the aqueduct arches stretching across the countryside, Rome felt connected not just as a city, but as a living, breathing network of paths and streams. Children drifted to sleep dreaming of long journeys along distant roads and water flowing across sky-high arches, imagining future adventures shaped by the incredible structures that defined their world. As Rome expanded across hills, valleys, and distant shores, its network of roads stretched like powerful stone arms reaching toward every corner of the growing republic, pulsing with footsteps, wheels, hooves, and the steady rhythm of a nation on the move. Along these ancient pathways, dust rose beneath the sandals of travelers, merchants guided mules loaded with clay jars, and bolts of fabric, and soldiers marched with shield and spear, the metal of their armor flashing beneath the rising sun. Children watched the endless flow of travelers with wide, excited eyes, imagining the faraway lands that lay beyond the horizon, glowing with mystery, adventure, and stories waiting to be told. The hum of movement along the roads became a music of its own, echoing between tall cypress trees and rolling green hills. Engineers and builders, skilled with chisels, plumb lines, and clever minds, worked tirelessly to carve, layer, and shape Rome's legendary highways. They dug deep trenches, filled them with crushed stones, laid flat slabs on top, and packed everything so tightly that the roads seemed as solid as the mountains themselves. Builders wiped sweat from their brows as the sun blazed above, while foremen inspected each layer carefully to make sure it would last centuries. Children sometimes followed the workers, picking up small pebbles or pieces of broken tile as souvenirs, their imaginations dancing with the idea that they were witnessing the creation of something grand and permanent. Even the wind seemed to whisper through the construction sites, carrying the promise that these roads would bind the empire together like strong, unbreakable threads. Merchants from distant lands traveled along these roads, bringing amber from the north, spices from the east, and shimmering silks from lands so far away they seemed almost magical. As caravans approached Rome, the air filled with lively chatter, the creaking of wooden carts, and the scent of unfamiliar herbs stored in tightly sealed boxes. Children ran to greet the caravans, staring in awe at exotic animals, colorful fabrics, and tiny trinkets carved from bone or ivory. Markets erupted with excitement as goods from distant regions spilled into the stalls, creating a vibrant tapestry of color, sound, and flavor. Travelers swapped stories of deserts, mountains, and storms, and Roman citizens listened eagerly, hungry for knowledge and adventure. Alongside the roads, milestones carved from smooth stone-marked distances in Roman miles, standing proudly like silent guardians guiding travelers on their journeys. Each marker told passers-by exactly how far they stood from the capital, reminding them that all roads, no matter how distant, dusty, or winding, ultimately led back to Rome. Children touched the cold stone, tracing the letters with their fingers and imagining themselves traveling all the way to the city where senators debated, poets recited verses, and heroes marched beneath towering arches. The milestones became symbols of Rome's reach and organization, a reminder that even the smallest detail of the empire's vast system was crafted with precision and care. But Rome's brilliance did not stop on the surface of its roads. High above valleys, rivers, and rolling countryside, aqueducts stretched across the landscape like giant stone bridges carrying the lifeblood of the empire: fresh, clean water. With arches rising into the sky like rows of colossal gateways, these massive structures transported water from distant springs and mountains into baths, fountains, homes, and gardens. The faint roar of flowing water echoed inside the stone channels, an endless river captured by Roman ingenuity. Children stood beneath the towering arches, necks craned back, as wide with wonder at the sheer size and strength of the aqueducts that marched across the land like stone giants. Inside the city, water splashed into glittering fountains shaped like dolphins, lions, and sea gods. Public baths buzzed with conversation as citizens, soaked in warm pools, scrubbed away the day's dust and shared stories of work, family, and the latest news from the forum. The sound of rushing water became part of the city's heartbeat, falling into basins, bubbling through pipes, cooling gardens, and cleaning streets. Children chased ripples across shallow pools, dipping their fingers into the cool water and laughing as the reflections danced beneath their touch. Families filled jars each morning, grateful for the lifeline that the aqueducts carried tirelessly across the empire. Roman engineers continued refining their techniques, designing clever slopes to keep the water flowing smoothly, even across long distances. They carved tunnels through hills, built siphons that dipped low and rose again, and calculated angles so precisely that the water traveled mile after mile with perfect consistency. Workers hammered wedges into rock, sparks flying as tunnels opened into the sunlight. Others balanced on scaffolding high above valleys, placing each stone with careful hands. The city's children looked up with admiration, whispering about the bravery and intelligence of the builders who dared climb so high or dig so deep to keep Rome thriving. As aqueducts delivered life to the cities, farmers watched with relief as irrigation channels brought water to their fields. Vineyards glistened beneath the sun, olive trees swayed gently as their roots drank from steady flows, and wheat fields rippled like golden oceans across the countryside. Food became plentiful, markets overflowed with ripe produce, and families gathered for hearty meals that celebrated the fruits of both earth and engineering. Children tasted fresh bread, sweet grapes, and roasted vegetables, savoring flavors made possible by the water that flowed silently through stone channels from mountains far beyond their sight. Even at night, the influence of Rome's roads and aqueducts continued to shape the rhythm of life. Travelers camped beside the roads, warming their hands by flickering fires as stories drifted into the starry sky. Water still murmured through the aqueducts, glistening in the moonlight as it slipped through arches and stone corridors. The empire seemed alive, breathing through its creations, its roads like veins, its aqueducts like arteries, both delivering connection, movement, and life to every corner touched by Roman stone and genius. Families drifted to sleep with the distant sounds of carts rolling and water flowing, comforted by the constancy and strength of Rome's mighty systems. And as the empire grew, so too did the pride of its people. Citizens walked the smooth roads, gazing at the rising arches of aqueducts with admiration and gratitude. Children learned that these structures were more than stone and mortar. They were proof of Roman imagination, willpower, and unity. Through dust and water, stone and sweat, Rome carved a masterpiece across the land, weaving distant territories into one thriving, connected world. The legacy of these marvels would outlast generations, standing tall long after the builders had vanished, reminding all who saw them of a civilization that mastered the art of movement, life, and transformation.